Hey there everyone, Nubkeks here, and in today's video we're taking a look at the Discipline Priest spec on the Shadowlands beta for World of Warcraft. The last video I did was on the Shadow Priest, the next one's going to be on Holy Priest, and then after that there's going to be all the other specs and classes as well, so make sure to stay tuned for all of that. But without any further ado, let's just dive in. Oh, hello there friend. And let's take a look at Disc. Disc has a few baseline spells being added, some new spells, which are going to be a very, very cool addition. First up, we have 3 different spells of the Mind variety. A really, really great one to see come in is Mind Blast. And this has actually been adapted to work specifically for Disc. Hang on, let me switch over here. I forgot to change the camera the first time I recorded this. I recorded the whole video, and I had to re-record the whole thing because I didn't show any goddamn tooltips. But anyway, we're on track this time. Saved at the last second. Okay. Mind Blast for Disc. It's a 15-second, 1.5 second cast, reduced by haste. 40-yard range, costs 3,000 mana, and it blasts the target's mind for 900 damage, and it will prevent the next 2,000 damage that the target's going to do. So essentially what they've done here is they have taken the absorb effect that used to be part of Smite, and they've baked that into the longer cooldown of Mind Blast instead, which I think is actually kind of a nice change, and that definitely makes Mind Blast feel like it fits well into the rotation. And it feels like a really good button to press. Again, in comparison, Smite's going to do 650 damage compared to Mind Blast doing 900. Penance will do 1,300 damage. So that gives you sort of a feel for where we're at. In terms of our healing numbers, by the way, Shadow Mend is a 3,000 heal with 1,500 then sort of anti-absorb thing that it has going for it. Power Word Shield is 2,000. In fact, you can see that the Mind Blast absorb is directly the same as the Power Word Shield absorb. So that's cool to see. We have 2 other mind spells then coming in. The first one here is Mind Seer. So as you can see, the tooltip is still in the Shadow version, saying it gives insanity and such. There's no mana cost associated with this yet. Don't know if that's intended or not, but it is a channeled ability. Let me move him out of the way there. It just channeled the ability. It's got no cooldown, and it will just pulse AoE damage. Interestingly enough, we obviously have Holy Nova still from BFA. Holy Nova has a rank 2, which gives it a shorter GCD, so you can spam like crazy. It will actually do the same DPS as Mind Seer. The difference being that Holy Nova explodes from you, the Discipline Priest. It also has a mana cost, and it also does a small bit of healing, whereas Mind Seer has a 40-yard range, and it's channeled. You can also cast it on allies like this. My opinion, very short here, is I think Mind Seer is awesome, and it's great to see it come back. I think it fits much better than Holy Nova. I think it's a bit silly to have 2 abilities that do almost the same thing, and personally, I'd be in the camp that would say they should probably just prune away Holy Nova, get rid of it, or make it a talent or a PvP talent or something, and have Mind Seer just be the sort of AoE filler for the Disc Priest. I think it looks cool, and it fits the theme of juggling light and shadow. But that's my thoughts. We have a new ability, which is intriguing. I'm not sure if it's working correctly quite yet on the beta, which is Mind Soothe. It's an instant cast, 40-yard range, which soothes the target, reducing the range at which it will attack you by 10 yards. Now, it only affects humanoid and dragonkin targets, lasts for 20 seconds, and it doesn't cause threat. It won't pull the mob or anything. So in theory, this could let you do something like, imagine this is a humanoid here. We could Mind Soothe this guy, and maybe we reduce his threat range enough that we could just about slip past and get up these stairs. And if this is, you know, a Mythic Plus dungeon or something like that, cool, you've done an awesome skip. Now, the bummer here, the bad news, unfortunately, is that Mind Soothe right now only affects the priest. It doesn't affect the other players in your party. So in Mythic Plus, actually not going to be that useful, at least in this incarnation. I'm still not sure what the intention for the developers is for this. But it is something to bear in mind. Hopefully it will have like a party-wide effect and could enable a couple of interesting skips in Mythic Plus. You know, a bit of extra utility for the priest class in general in Mythic Plus would be very welcome, because it's not, you know, the most represented class by any means. So yeah, that's Mind Soothe. Okay, we got a couple of big ones then to round out our extra abilities. The first one here is Power Infusion. Power Infusion. 2-minute cooldown, 40-yard range instant cast. Infuse the target with power for 20 seconds, increasing haste by 25%. So this is an absolutely massive steroid. It's equal to, I believe, the nerfed Bloodlust now. This is our smites without it. This is the power infusion animation. And these are our smites with power infusion. So you can see, well, 25% faster, basically, roughly speaking. So that's what that's doing. Very, very potent. The big deal here is that you can cast it not only on yourself, but you can cast it on other party members as well. This is either a really good thing or a really bad thing, depending, I guess, on how you feel about it. On a positive note, it means that you have utility. It's like I can save it for myself, use it during a ramp up, use it during a difficult healing moment in an arena or in a Mythic Plus dungeon, and really help stabilize my party. I could also use it on a damage dealer, and help them burst a boss harder, help them cleave down a Mythic Plus pack harder, whatever. I could use it on a tank, I guess, to help with their survivability a little bit. I don't know if that one would be as relevant. But that's the idea, that you have options and maybe some interesting choices. Do I want to use it on our single target damage guy to really focus boss damage? Do I want to save it for, let's say there's a pack of mobs spawning in. We've got a Ret Paladin who's got wings saved up. He's saving his wings to just absolutely explode these adds that are spawning in the raid. I can power infuse him and make sure that we beat that damage check and that he's able to take out those adds. That sort of thing. That's interesting. The downside, of course, is that, for a lot of people, you're obviously going to want to use it on yourself. And that may not be always the best option. In fact, it could end up that it's always the wrong option. I think less likely with Discipline Priest. I think it's so powerful for Discipline Priest ramp up on a spec that's already good at burst raid healing. I think it's quite likely that you will be using this on yourself quite often, but there is the potential that in many fights, or in some fights, you'll be prioritizing casting this on other people, which can feel a bit bad. So that is something to bear in mind. And there's always the potential for drama and stuff of people fighting over who's going to get the power infusion for their parses and blah, 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 which is not particularly enjoyable to at least to me, and maybe probably to you as well, I would think. But there you are. Another massive change here, and the final extra ability. Why does details not work on this character? I don't know. Beta. I'm helpful. So helpful. Shadow Word Death. Okay. Shadow Word Death is an instant cast. 20-second cooldown. And again, right now, it does not have any mana costs associated with it. This is a Word of Dark Binding that inflicts 2,300 shadow damage to the target. If the target is not killed by Shadow Word Death, the caster takes damage equal to the damage inflicted upon the target. And it also does double damage to targets that are below 20% health. So as you can see, this thing hits like an absolute truck. An absolute truck, guys. Like, bear in mind, a smite sitting for 650. Our hardest hitting other spell then is Penance, which is 1,300. Well, Shadow Word Death hits for 2,300. If they're below 20% health, that's hitting for 4,600 right now. It's a monumental amount of damage. And although it doesn't trigger Atonement, this just does so much damage for a single GCD that certainly, without question, I think in Execute, it's going to be quite worth using it, just purely for the damage that it's going to do. Shadow Word Death looks bam, like that. And there's the damage it does to me. Now, oh, thank you for the healing, my friend. There will be, of course, the risk in Execute that if I am going to hit them for almost 5,000 damage, that's 5,000 damage off my health. That is, it's under, but close to a quarter of my health bar. So that's quite a significant hit to take, which is a little bit rough. So do bear that in mind. And you'll see this will tie in with some of our legendaries as well. Okay, we'll tie into those. Now, we also have a couple of talent changes, which I want to take a look at here. A couple of interesting ones. First of all, Powered Solace. The cooldown has been nerfed. It's now 15 seconds, affected by haste. My opinion on this one, I think that they could do some merging here, right? They could do some merging here. I feel like Mind Blast, which is, a 14-second cooldown, use it on cooldown type ability, and then Powered Solace, which is a 14-second cooldown, use it on cooldown type ability. I think I think they should probably just fuse the two of these together. I think you can end up like with Schism in there, with using Shadow Word Death, all of this stuff. There can be quite a few buttons to juggle, and especially buttons with short cooldowns that are gonna feel like they clash a little bit. I think that there's an opportunity to have Powered Solace. You could even change it and have it be some sort of an upgrade for Mind Blast. Either just have it be very simply, it makes Mind Blast, it's a better version of Mind Blast with the same effects, but it's instant cast and restores mana, and tune it to sort of be equal to these. That might work. have it be like Shadow Word Void, perhaps, for Shadow Priest, where it just gives Mind Blast 2 charges on a slightly longer recharge rate. You know, that could work as well. It's a mana return as well. I don't know. I think they could do something just to avoid having a little bit too much of a button clutter. Kind of the same issue that we see here with Mindseer Holy Nova. You know, kind of abilities sharing a sort of the same button press, as it were, in terms of your rotation is maybe a bit clunky. So I think that merging them together in some form, having this be an upgrade, would be good. A very interesting one here, though. Check this one out. Shadow Covenant. Very exciting. Also not working on beta, but very exciting nonetheless. Shadow Covenant instantly heals the target and 4 other injured allies within 30 yards for 1,900. To put it in perspective, Powered Radiance, right, heals for 1,000 and applies Atonement. But heals for 1,000. This heals for almost twice as much as a Powered Radiance. And it increases the shadow damage you deal by 25% for 7 seconds, but during this period you are unable to cast any holy spells. If I show it to you, here we go, here it is, you can see that, well, I can actually smite him just fine. So it doesn't work right at all here. Right now it does not work. It does not prevent you from casting holy spells right now on beta. It makes it difficult to test, but this is very intriguing. It's obviously a very powerful option and a very unique idea, I think, with sort of juggling the light and the darkness as the Discipline Priest. One downside with his ability is that there's not actually a lot of shadow spells that will actually help you to heal, right? So let's say I set up some atonements and maybe I pop my evangelism, and then I'm I go into Shadow Covenant. Okay, I can hit them with Schism. I can hit them with Mind Blast, which is a shadow spell, and Schism. That's 2 spells. And then that's kind of it, actually. I could spam Purge the Wicked or Shadow Word Pain on them, because that's a shadow spell, but that does 100 damage instantly. It's not too hot. The dot will tick for more, but that's kind of it. You know, Penance, I believe, does not count as a shadow spell. And Shadow Word Death obviously would, and this will make Shadow Word Death, again, monstrously damaging in terms of the damage output. And this, again, we'll come back to this when we come to the Legendaries, because there is a Legendary that makes Shadow Word Death work with Atonement, but by default, it does not work with Atonement. So I think, you know, like, you could easily end up in a situation where you press Shadow Covenant, you Schism, you Mind Blast, and then you're just left to spam Mindseer in terms of the healing output, which doesn't feel right. It feels a bit wonky. So that is something to bear in mind. It's maybe a little bit clunky in that implementation. But there you are. Without the Shadow Word Death Legendary, where it becomes much more significant in terms of healing. And then at level 50, we have a new talent here to replace Lenience. Lenience is a flat 3% damage reduction to everyone with Atonement, which is obviously quite potent, but that's gone now. We have Light's Caress instead. Allies are healed for 2,000 when they gain the benefit of Power Word Barrier, and are healed again for 2,000 if they're under the barrier when it expires. So not too shabby. Again, that's roughly 10% health healing each time you go into the barrier or it expires. Or sorry, the first time you go into the barrier and then when it expires. So definitely intriguing. What I do like about this is there's certainly gameplay around this, right? There's a lot of gameplay baked into it for your team. You know, if they move into the barrier well and they stay in there until the end, that extra healing is going to be pretty substantial. It's certainly interesting in terms of Mythic Plus, this level 50 row. Like, Evangelism is okay in Mythic Plus, but really nowhere near as important as it is in the raids, just because of your Powered Radiance. Luminous Barrier is, you know, again, it's rather underwhelming compared to how it is in raiding. So Light's Caress and Mythic Plus could be very interesting, but it does have the downside, I suppose, if your team needs to be able to play around it, which is difficult for pugs and things like that. So just bear that in mind, that, you know, the talent row Mythic Plus may be a little clunky, but there you are. For our Legendaries, then, we have some very exciting things happening for Disc Priest. There's currently 3 generic Legendaries available to all pre-specs. There's at least one Legendary for Shadow that seems extremely potent for Disc right now, so I'll point that out as well. And then we have 4 Discipline Priest specific Legendaries. I'm not sure. I expect that will probably be locked to our spec specific Legendaries, that Disc won't be allowed to equip Holy Legendaries or Shadow Legendaries, but here I'll show you this one just in case it is. Let me show it to you actually right now. So this at the moment is on a hood, and this makes your Shadow Fiend or Mindbender do 20% more damage as Shadow Flame damage, and it reduces the cooldown by 40%. So this is very potent. Obviously, our Shadow Fiend by default is a 3-minute cooldown. If we pop this on, you can see that right now it does in fact work for Disc. It lowers Shadow Fiend down to a 1.8 minute cooldown. The bigger deal is with Mindbender. This brings Mindbender down to a 36 second cooldown. Now, Mindbender obviously is going to do a decent little bit of healing, I suppose, through Atonement. But more importantly, it also regenerates mana. So, yeah, this is obviously supposed to be a Shadow Priest legendary, but if it works for Disc, it might end up being okay. We shall see. Just bear it in mind. Okay. Then we have our generic Holy Priest legendaries. This one's actually really nice for Disc. In this case, it's on Sandals. And when Shadow Word Pain expires on a target, 5 allies within 30 yards of the target are healed for 3% of their maximum health. So this works really well for Disc. Because you're just naturally dotting everything up with Shadow Word Pain or Purge the Wicked because it's effective healing through Atonement. The good news about this is that it does work if the target dies with your Shadow Word Pain on them. So it will add up. Like if you just maintain Shadow Word Pain all the time on targets in Mythic Plus, when they die, it will heal your party. It will add up to a nice chunk of extra healing in Mythic Plus again in particular. It could also end up being a good source of healing if there's raid fights where you have lots of little ads spawn in that are going to die relatively quickly. It's going to be worth then to dot them up with Shadow Word Pain. It will add up to just some generic sort of trickle healing to your raid, which is kind of cool. We have a utility legendary here, the Shadowgas Ring in this case, which makes Leap of Faith instead cause you to leap to your target and have 2 charges. Leap of Faith by default pulling the target to you. This might be awesome later in the expansion. On Shadowlands launch, we are only going to be able to equip 1 single legendary, and currently there's no differentiation between throughput legendaries, utility legendaries, or what have you. So you are almost definitely, apart from some really particular niche circumstances, you're almost definitely going to want something that simply makes you do more healing or damage, right? That's probably what we're going to want. If we're allowed to equip 2 legendaries, or 3 or 4, or who knows what they'll do later in the expansion, then this could become good then. But I think, on launch, it's nice to know that it's there, but I really don't think you're going to be using this. Then we have a hood here, another hood, and this one is quite intriguing. This makes Power Infusion also grant you 100% of its effects when you use Power Infusion on an ally. This could be very, very powerful. I think this does sort of naturally work well for healers. Like, if there's a very tough healing check, I could go as the Disc Priest. Okay, me and my Resto Shaman buddy, we're going to absolutely blast this really tough healing check. Power Infuse both of us. Let's go. The 2 of us are going to carry this super hard. So I think that's really interesting and quite a lot of fun. So that's very, very possible to be a good one. Also useful in Mythic Plus, or would be useful, I suppose, in PvP as well. But like in Mythic Plus, if you can think about it, you could be pulling a difficult pack. Really nice to be able to power infuse the DPS so they can kill the difficult pack faster, and then you also get the power infusion so you can keep the group safe and stable during that Mythic Plus pack. So that's great as well. Maybe not as useful with the damage dealer in a raid. Like, they're going to want power infusion on pull and like on cooldown with their CDs, their 2-minute cooldowns. So that's going to be a little bit more awkward. Will your healing link up with that? Probably not. Like, are you going to be healing stuff in the first 20 seconds of the fight? Quite rare that you would be doing something like that. So a little bit more clunky in that sense, but still a very cool legendary for sure. No doubt about that, I think. Then we have 4 Discipline Priest specific ones. Grimveiled Rope here. During Rapture, Power with Shield costs 20% less mana and applies 6-second longer atonements. So this one's very nice. Obviously, we have a couple of bits here that are going to make Rapture feel like a better button to press, and that's always welcome. This really beefs up your Rapture cooldown, so that is very cool to see, and it's going to feel really nice, especially in a raid environment. Next up, we have Grimveiled Mittens. These ones are not so good right now, I would say, but we'll see with some tuning maybe in future. Right now, though, what it does, makes Power with Shield instantly heal the target for 428 and reflect 30% of the damage absorbed. I don't know, this one is not very exciting at all, I would say. It's very passive, very backline. There's no real gameplay here, and it also appears to be quite weak right now. We'll see what they do with it, but that's it there. Not one I'm jumping out of my seat for. Grimveil Pants, this one is super exciting and potentially super overpowered. This reduces Shadowword's death cooldown by 8 seconds and causes its damage to trigger Atonement. So this is absolutely bananas, insane. Absolutely insane. Like I said, Shadowword Death is our hardest hitting spell. This does a a truckload of damage. This will reduce it from a default 20-second cooldown to a 12-second cooldown, further reduced by haste. So you're going to be weaving this into your rotation, your core damage rotation, your core healing rotation, very, very frequently. It's going to really up the amount of damage that you do, and it's going to do a lot of healing as well. And in particular, this is going to be a massive amount of damage and a massive amount of healing in Execute. I mean, if you certainly consider the previous raid, Nyalotha, there were a lot of bosses there that had burn phases at the end of the fight. Or like if you think of like N'Zoth, Mythic N'Zoth, for example. I mean, Mythic Jaina in Battle of Dazar'alor had the same thing. Mythic Ajara had the same thing in Eternal Palace. So this seems like it could be extremely, extremely potent. And perhaps enable very much so a sort of Execute healer niche for Discipline Priest. Not like we needed more raid niches. Like we're already arguably the top, competing with Holy Paladins for BFA, I suppose, the top raid healer. This could push us even further there, so there we are. And then finally, the final legendary here is the Grimveil Cape. Powered Radiance has a 50% chance to cause your next penance to be free and fire 3 extra bolts. This one's very cool. Let me just show you this one, because it does have a visual effect. Let's throw out Powered Radiance, hope we get it. No luck there. Try again. Oh man, no luck at all. Well, let me run down here. We'll try again in a second. Let me go show you the conduits while we wait, shall we? Oh, we got it. Here we are. So this is the proc. Very cool. Again, coming from our cloak here. I mean, Penance fires 3 bolts by default, so this makes it fire extra, which is awesome. You can see it has the visual proc. And there you go. Machine Gun Penance is a go. How cool is that? I think it's super thematic. I think it looks awesome. Here we go again. Are we ready? Machine Gun Penance. Let's go. So this is definitely going to feel, it feels really fun. This is what I was running for most of the dungeon footage you're going to see later on. 'Cause it's just like, it just feels really super fun to play with. Pretty powerful. And obviously because you just cast Powered Radiance, you're going to have atonement up on everyone around, or well, 5 people around you. So that, essentially double healing from Penance is going to add up to quite a bit. So yeah, very nice and interesting and visually cool legendary. Okay, now the reason I brought you guys down here was to show you the conduits. These go into your soulbind slots. Again, you're going to have endurance slots, you'll have potency slots and finesse. Finesse is basically utility, endurance is survivability, and potency is, well, healing or damage, throughput, that sort of stuff. And we'll do the soulbinds in another video. Let me show you the conduits, though, the things we can slot in for the priest. Okay, we got 3 endurance conduits. Light's Inspiration, Desperate Prayer heals you for an additional 5% max health over 5 seconds. Translucent Image, for the first 2 seconds of Fade, you take 5% less damage. And Charitable Soul, casting Power with Shield on an ally, also shields you for 10% of the amount for 10 seconds. These are all obviously fairly underwhelming. Charitable Soul, though, again, these are cross-priest. The other 2 priest specs are very unhappy. At least for disc, you get Charitable Soul, though, which works really well for us. We obviously cast Power with Shield more than the other ones, and especially with Rapture, that's kind of nifty. It gives you a bit of survivability while you're rapturing people, so that's kind of nice. But nothing overly exciting there, at least not yet. For finesse conduits, we have 4. Dispel Magic, Purify, Mass Dispel costs 20% less mana. Levitate grants 20% increased movement speed. Casting Power Infusion on an ally reduces its cooldown by 5 seconds. And after Psychic Scream ends, affected target's movement speed is reduced by 40% for 5 seconds. I would say these, again, are a little bit more exciting. Less mana is, it's fairly background, fairly passive, but that's always welcome. Mass Dispel does cost a lot of mana. Move with Grace is awesome. Levitate giving movement speed. So we're obviously one of the slowest specs in the game. So this will really help us, when there's a lot of movement in a raid encounter, or when we're running around in Mythic Plus dungeons. That's going to be nice. Maybe some kiting strats for PvP. That would, of course, damage breaks Levitate, so it won't be super useful there. And you can also, of course, use this on your teammates, which is super cool, right? So you and your, your Vengeance Demon Hunter is leaping ahead in a dungeon, and you and your Unholy Death Knight and your Ret Paladin buddies are struggling to keep up. Well, we can levitate them all, and we all get a little bit of a speed boost, and that's quite nice. This works really well. The Power Infusion one, Power Unto Others, is going to work super well with the Legendary that works on Power Infusion 2. And that could end up being very interesting, especially if the cooldown reduction scales up, and it might then sync up with like healing through checks or what have you in raids or dungeons. We'll see exactly how that works out. And then Mental Recovery, the Psychic Scream movement speed thing, is obviously very nice. I think it's going to help in PvP, help peeling and kiting in PvP. It's going to help peeling and kiting in Mythic Plus. So that's a nice one to see there as well. For potency conduits, these are, I guess, the more exciting ones, I suppose. We've got 4 disc-specific ones. There are also Covenant-specific ones to power up your Covenant ability. And then there's one Shadow-specific one, which could actually be okay for disc as well. So I'll show you that to you again in case we can use it. I'll show you that one first, actually. It's Rabid Shadow. So this is supposed to be for the Shadow Priest. Make Shadow Fiend attack 20% faster and do 10% more damage. So there's obviously a Mindbender build for Shadow Priest for doing damage. But this could also work really well with Discipline Priest, I think. You know, it's going to give you more mana regen. Especially so with this. So again, maybe it could be good if we're allowed to equip it. Who knows? The actual disc ones, though, we have Exaltation. This one's very nice. Rapture's duration is increased by 2 seconds, and its power with shield enhancement is increased by 10%. So that's really, really cool. You're going to get, again, a lot more value out of your Rapture. So you could set up a pretty nice Rapture build already, right? So during Rapture, power with shield costs less and applies longer atonements. Our Rapture's going to be longer, the power with shields are stronger, and then we're also going to get some value from that power with shield as we cast it. That's a nice little build right there. Shining Radiance. Power word Radiance healings increased by 5%. Yep. Okay, moving on quickly. Pain Transformation. Pain Suppression also heals your target for 10% of their maximum health. You know, one of the areas where Discipline Priest, without question, struggles is single target healing. This helps a little bit. Although that being said, Pain Suppression is a 3-minute cooldown. So, you know, in the long term, this isn't going to equate to too much, but at least it's a tiny bit of extra burst single target healing in a way. And then Swift Penitence, the damage and healing of your first, damage or healing of your first bolt of penance is increased by 15%. So a bit more burst healing or damage, a bit more upfront benefit to your penance there. So on the whole, I would say that the disc specific potency conduits aren't all that amazing apart from Exaltation. Like I'm quite keen when I'm setting up my soulbind and choosing the path I go. I kind of want to make sure that I get one potency conduit for Exaltation, but I'm not feeling too pushed to get the other ones in there. And then we also have, by the way, Covenant specific ones. So this one, for example, Courageous Ascension. Ascended Blast does 10% more damage. Ascended Eruption does an additional 1% damage per stack of Boon of the Ascended. Speaking of Covenants and Covenant abilities, let's go check them out right now. Alrighty, so for the Kyrian, we're going to get 2 new abilities. We have the Signature ability, which is just for everybody that's part of the Kyrian Covenant. It's Summon Stewart. Where is he? There he is. Here's my little buddy, and he's going to give me a Phial of Serenity, which functions very much like a health stone. It has 3 charges. You can use this to restore 15% health and removes all diseases, poisons, curses, and bleeds affecting you. All of these signature abilities are situationally very powerful. So again, in situations where you have those things, dispelling them off you is very welcome. We obviously lack personal survivability as a Disc Priest. So that's always nice to have. There you are. Now, even more exciting though, this is the most intricate Covenant ability for Priest. You know, Night Phase a little bit up there as well, but Boon of the Ascended. It's a 3-minute cooldown, 1.5 second cast time. Draw upon the power of the Ascended for 10 seconds, granting you access to Ascended Nova and replacing Smite with Ascended Blast and increasing your movement speed by 50%. Upon expiration, release an Ascended Eruption, which will explode for 1,700 arcane damage to all enemies and 2,200 healing to all allies within 15 yards, increased for each stack of Boon of the Ascended. This is very cool. So you'll see over here's where I have Boon of the Ascended button, and over here's Smite. So Smite will be replaced. And essentially, the sort of rotation, Boon of the Ascended rotation you're going to have, cast Boon of the Ascended, you're going to do an Ascended Blast, then 2 Ascended Eruptions, Ascended Blast, 2 Eruptions, Blast, and so on and so forth. And you could obviously combo this to their cooldowns don't sync up, but you could combo Power Infusion with this to be even more powerful. Ascended Blast gives you a flat 5 stacks of Boon of the Ascended. You see that stack up over here. And Ascended Nova gives 1 stack for each target hit. So in single target, you're probably just going to use the Blast. In AoE, you'll also weave in the Novas as well. So let me show it to you here. Here we go. Boon of the Ascended. Going to Blast. Do 2 Novas. Going to Blast. 2 Novas. Blast. Nova. Nova, Blast, Nova, and boom, it explodes in the Eruption, and there you are. So in terms of the damage, as you can see, it's going to do a fair chunk of damage. The Ascended Blast is good single target damage. Oh, also worth noting, actually, I forgot to say, but the Ascended Nova, also heals people that are nearby, and the Ascended Blast, it does single target damage and also heals allies for 100% of the damage done. So it's pretty nifty, right? It's pretty nifty as both a damage and healing cooldown. Relatively unobtrusive in single target, like you'll cast a boon of the Ascended, then you just press Ascended Blast every third GCD. In AoE, then it becomes very potent as not only a damage ability, but also a big healing ability as well. You're going to build up a very powerful Eruption by getting lots of stacks at the Nova, and that's going to do it not only a ton of damage, but a ton of healing. It feels really fun in the dungeons to use this. It does a lot, and it just feels awesome. It's nice to have another big cooldown for Discipline Priest, so yeah. For me, I really, really like this one. If you are a Discipline Priest of the Necrolord variety, you're going to get access to these two abilities. Fleshcraft. Ooh, cool. Fleshcraft is your signature ability. It's a 2-minute cooldown channeled ability. You channel for 4 seconds and generate a shield equal to 20% of your maximum health, and it lasts for 2 minutes. You can also channel it near a corpse to claim their essence to grow the shield up to 50% of your maximum health, and it's most effective against powerful enemies. So again, this one, again, is in niche circumstances very, very potent. It will help you survive like burst damage overlaps and one-shot abilities in Mythic Plus or raids, which is always kind of nice. And there's some cool Covenant things that tie into it. So for example, one of the soul binds is making me immune to crowd control effects with Fleshcraft active. That's not a default thing. That is a soul bind thing. So that's very cool as well for PvP and again for like Mythic Plus and possibly for raid too. But yeah, there you go. Again, in niche circumstances, could be great. You know, help do a soak in the raid or what have you. In other circumstances, not as useful. Same thing with all the signature abilities. And then our class-specific ability, if you're a Necrolord Priest, is Unholy Nova. It's a 1-minute cooldown, instant cast, that will do an explosion of dark energy that heals all allies within 15 yards for 2,000 and infects enemies with Unholy Transfusion, which does 2,500 shadow damage over 15 seconds, and allies who damage the target are healed for 170. The ally damaging the target, I think it has about a 1.5 second GCD, so they can at most proc it 10 times, but that does add up to over those 15 seconds an extra 1,700 healing. So this is going to do a lot of healing and a lot of damage, especially in AoE. It does work through Atonement. In fact, I believe that basically all of the Priest Covenant abilities do work through Atonement. But there you go. It's very simple, very straightforward. You press this button on the 1-minute cooldown. It's going to do a big burst of AoE and put a nice shadow dot that will do good damage, great healing. And yeah, it's a powerful and very potent ability, especially for Disc Priest. Simple to use, but effective. As a Venthyr Priest, you're going to get access to the Door of Shadows as your signature ability. It's a 1-minute cooldown, 35-yard range, 1.5 second cast time, teleport, which is very cool. So we can like do it over here. Zip on over. Awesome, awesome. Very powerful. Again, in those niche circumstances, you could avoid mechanics in a fight. You could potentially do some skips in Mythic Plus. Very cool indeed. The Covenant ability, though, for Priests is called Mind Games. Right now, this is, in my opinion, the least interesting one for Discipline Priests. It's a 1.5 second cast time, reduced by haste, like lots of stuff has been, with a 45-second cooldown. This will do 2,200-ish shadow damage up front, and it will apply a 5-second debuff on the target. And the next 4,000 damage the target deals will heal their target instead, and the next 4,000 healing they do will damage their target instead. The problem I have with this, let me show you how it looks. It looks like this. Mind Games. Looks pretty cool, right? Looks pretty cool. The problem here is that it's going to be relatively difficult to use this. It's going to be very easy to proc the healing aspect of it. So that's, you know, whatever. Like a mob is beating on your tank. You hit them for 2,200 shadow damage. That's nice. And then they're going to try to do damage to your tank. And 4,000 of the damage they try to do to your tank is going to heal your tank instead. So that's pretty nifty. You know, it's a good single target ability and good single target healing in that sense. It's going to be quite difficult, though, to get the second half of it out there, which is the healing that the enemy does, doing damage to their target instead. You know, how many enemies in the game are going to heal? You know, this is going to work amazingly well in PvP. There's no question about that. But in, you know, Mythic Plus, only certain enemies will actually heal. And you're oftentimes kicking those heals. In raids, many enemies don't heal at all. So it's going to be kind of niche. And it is worth noting that reverse damage and healing will restore up to 4% mana. As far as I know, in the current implementation, the reverse damage restores up to 2%. the reversed healing restores up to 2%. So to get the total 4%, you have to fully reverse 4,000 damage and fully reverse 4,000 healing as well, which is certainly tricky. It is worth noting that the Conduit upgrade you can get for this, the Potency Conduit, does increase the duration of the debuff by 15 seconds, so 20 seconds total, which makes it a lot easier to get the value out of it. It's still going to be a little bit tricky. Again, it's a good single target one, but maybe not. Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't seem as exciting to me as the other ones are going to be for Disc Priest. If you like the Night Fae as a Disc Priest, you're going to get access to Soul Shape as your signature ability. It is a 12-second buff with a 1.5 minute cooldown that turns you into a Vulpin, increasing your movement speed by 30%, and you can reactivate it to teleport 10 yards forwards. You won't see a duration here because it lasts indefinitely in rest areas, which is cool. This is what the teleport looks like down here. Flicker. It's a small little dash, but it could be, again, useful for getting over, bad pools on the ground, fire on the ground, sanguine pools, that sort of thing. Always kind of nifty. So there you go. That's Soul Shape. Very cool. And then Fey Blessings. This sort of competes with the Kyrian for being one of the more intricate abilities. And this one's very cool. 1.5 minute cooldown, instant cast. Surround yourself with helpful sprites, causing your next 10 spell casts to age your target, depending on your chosen spell. Power Witch Shield will invigorate the target with 2% mana or 20% resource. Shadow Mend will reduce an ally's damage taken by 10% for 15 seconds. And Powered Radiance will reduce the cooldowns of one major ability for all targets by 3 seconds. And see, the buff lasts for a minute, and the cooldown doesn't start until you consume all the charges. I actually have a Conduit equipped right now. The Conduit gives you 2 extra charges, so affects 2 extra spells. If I, sorry, let me, oh yeah, I've got my abilities all wonky. I wasn't testing this on disc. But I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of how this is going to work on disc. Very, very tasty for the Discipline Priest. There's no question about it. Certainly compared to the other Priest specs, the cooldown reduction effect for the other Priest specs is more potent. It's on Prayer of Healing for Holy Priest, which is a spammable ability. And it's on Void Bolt for Shadow Priest, which is every third spell that you cast in Void form. So those 2 specs for Priest get a lot more out of the cooldown reduction here. For us, obviously, as a Disc Priest, you're going to get a lot out of, like you could potentially really exploit this. And I think it's actually a little bit worrying, right? In Rapture, I can spam Power Word Shield on myself. The other Priest specs can't do that. So we could really, really exploit the Power Word Shield aspect to funnel resources into a single target. There's already been meme videos of Frost Death Knights, for example, getting ridiculously long Breath of Sindragosas out. Breath of Sindragosa keeps draining and draining and draining their runic power, but we could just, with Fey Blessings, we can spam on them Power Word Shield for like in total with this Conduit, 12 casts straight of Power Word Shield on them with Rapture. They could get way much longer Breath of Sindragosa out, or you could help like a Shadow Priest in Void form or whatever. So that's a little bit wonky. I'm a bit worried about that interaction for Discipline Priest just from a balance perspective. I think it works better when it's, without the Rapture effect, where you have to spread that resource restoration around different players with your Power Word Shield. And then very fun for us is Shadow Mend, giving 10% damage reduction for 15 seconds. So that's obviously going to be really nice in Mythic Plus. It adds even more damage reduction to the Discipline Priest toolkit, which is obviously extremely powerful. If you add on the damage reduction to Barrier, and then you can also give the particularly squishy members of your raid Shadow Mend as well. So, I mean, like you yourself as the priest would be quite happy with this one, for example. That could be very nice for surviving big burst damage in raids. It's going to help stabilize you quite a lot in Mythic Plus. So yeah, I think Fey Blessings is very cool. It's really nice to have a utility-based Covenant choice, which I think is awesome. And certainly I'd say as the Discipline Priest, the Powered Radiance interaction, there's really no interaction there. You kind of just have to use Powered Radiance as it comes. But certainly in terms of how we apply this with Shadow Mend and with Powered Shield, we have quite a lot of options there, more options than even the other pre-specs. So that's quite an interesting and tasty use of utility for us. Though there are, I think for all pre-specs, some balance questions when it comes to Fey Blessing. And there you guys go. That is a look at all the different pieces of the Discipline Priest kit and toolkit in the Shadowlands beta. I would say overall, it's looking really good. If you're a Discipline Priest, I think you're going to be pretty damn happy going into Shadowlands. Our baseline toolkit's getting a lot of really nice stuff. Mind Blast just stands out as a straight upgrade, a big highlight. It essentially fills the rotational spot that Power Word Solace held for basically all of BFA. And I think it just fits in really naturally and feels really good in our rotation. I do think it raises a bit of a question mark in regards to Power Word Solace, that with Power Word Solace then, your rotation becomes a little bit cluttered. That very much has pushed me towards playing with Mindbender, which just feels really, it's a lot easier to use and it's almost as effective, right? So that for me has felt better so far. So that's a bit of a question mark. I'd like to see them take another pass at it and maybe update Power Word Solace to either function differently or simply be some sort of an upgrade for Mind Blast. I think that would work really well. On a similar note, Mind Seer coming back is awesome. It looks great. I think it fits Disc really well. I think they could, again, though, remove Holy Nova. It just fills the same spot that Mind Seer does in terms of your rotation. And I just honestly prefer Mind Seer. I think it's cooler. I think it works better. One concern I do have for Disc Priest, which is probably a good thing if you're a Disc Priest and a bad thing if you're another healer looking from the outside in. I do have something of a concern for balance going into Shadowlands. Discipline Priest was already arguably the top healer, sort of competing with Holy Paladin for almost the entirety of BFA, thanks to the burst raid healing they could do and the damage reduction cooldowns and survivability that they provided their team in regards to burst damage, whilst also at the same time doing an absolute ton of damage relative to other healers, right? So we're going to have all of those things and arguably more going into Shadowlands with the new abilities that we've got. In particular, Shadow Word Death adding a ton of single target damage and an absolute ton of execute damage, and really being exacerbated by the Shadow Word Death legendary, which lets it heal through atonement. A lot of fights have, burn phase executes, and I think it's a really cool niche to be able to be a very potent damage dealer and healer with Shadow Word Death, applying atonement with that legendary while you're in those phases. I just do worry that it might end up being a little bit too strong for the Discipline Priest. So we'll see exactly how they balance that one out. But that looks really good, really fun right now. But again, a bit worrying for the other healers going, oh my god, I wish I could do that. And likewise, Power Infusion is a straight up new cooldown we're getting that you can use on yourself or your teammates. Very powerful, really nice form of utility. Again, it raises a question mark of how are they going to balance Disc around that. I'm not entirely sure. It could end up being just that Disc is just super powered. We do so many things so well. I guess that one concern that still remains, actually there's a couple of concerns going into Shadowlands though, like the conduits that we have are pretty underwhelming. I'm definitely not jumping out of my seat for joy at many of those conduits, so I think a second pass on the conduits would be kind of welcome. And in particular, our single target healing is definitely still lacking. So that's still going to be a problem in Mythic Plus for sure. So yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see some of those conduits maybe focus a little bit more on some single target healing or stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. I think though that the Discipline Priest is really on the road to being a good healer and being a really, really fun spec once again for another expansion. So thumbs up for them. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Check back tomorrow to hear about the Holy Priest. I'll see you all then. Bye-bye.